Without a doubt, because our actions was always motivated for the safety of the learners, and the prevailing conditions at the time were at the height of the pandemic, and we just did not have all the safety requirements in place. We're still very busy studying the whole sanction and the judgment in itself. Remember, the judgment was 364 pages. But we are morally obligated for a number of reasons to take this matter on review or to higher authority, be it the appeals or be it to the ELRC or to the Labour Court, because fundamentally there's one thing that's in dispute here. It's the role of the SGB, it's the role of the parents and the role of the principal when it comes to governance. And it is my view that the WCD overstepped that boundary when they didn't allow the governing body to execute their functions. So we're morally obligated as a school community, as principal people, to take this matter to higher authority.
SGB made the recommendation that Mr. Neumann was the best candidate. At that point in time, they didn't want to appoint Mr. Neumann already, because I think the WCD is. Yeah. Because I think at that point in time, they already saw that Mr. Neumann was the type of man that had morals and that he would stand his ground and in what he believes in. And so it took forever before they appointed Mr. Neumann. And then afterwards, when we had the issue with the fence, for years they've been trying to, we've been fighting to have a fence around the school. Mr. Neumann went in numerous times in numerous letters, and then they said, okay, they will put up a fence, but only half a fence. And Mr. Neumann said, no ways. So he was always like acting in the best interest of the children, and they didn't like that he stood up against him. So when this happened, the pandemic, because everything is so twisted, and what's put out in the media is so twisted, because they say Mr. Neumann closed the school. That never happened. They were at the school, the teachers were at school every day. There was one day the school was closed, but not by Mr. Neumann, by the community. And the Human Rights Commission, because the Human Rights Commission took a walk through the school, they looked at the toilets. The toilets wasn't working. There was one tap. There was no one, there was no support staff to clean or sanitize the classes. So it was impossible to do what the president said, to have the social distancing, sanitize all the time, wash the hands. So at that point in time, that was the day that the Human Rights Commission said the school is unsafe, the school must be closed. And the community, all of us, we actually told the teachers to leave, and the community, and that was the only day. But the next day they were back at school. So that was never closed the school. So all of the allegations that was made against Mr. Neumann, we've proven it over and over, but they just won't see it. It's like whatever we're talking, that's why we say so which one. Because like the assault case against the learner was intoxicated. They wouldn't allow the learner on the bus. When the learner became aggressive, he was the one that should actually be charged with assault, because he was the one who pushed Mr. Neumann around. And all Mr. Neumann said, he pointed at him and said, you don't speak to me like that and you don't touch me. And then he grabbed Mr. Neumann's hand like that, and Mr. Neumann freed himself. Now, according to the presiding officer and the WCD, that was the assault when he pulled his hand back. So there's video footage, witnesses, but they just won't, and they found him guilty of assault against this learner. And that learner was the drug peddler on the school as well, who sold drugs to children and landed children in a hospital. So when we expelled the learner, after the hearing that we had with the learner about the drug peddling, that was also so strange, because then we made a recommendation to expel the learners, and we know already with the department, they never uphold the recommendations. They always say, no, the learner must just be suspended. But this time they actually upheld the recommendation, and they agreed the learner has to be expelled. even the witness that Mr. Neumann had, the teacher, with the official from the WCED came, and he approached this teacher and wanted to bribe this teacher with a position, a permanent position, and the teacher refused. That teacher laid a case against that official in the WCED, but the presiding officer refused to let that teacher witness. Why? And then there was Mr. Newman's direct, immediate supervisor, Mrs. Duplessis. Mrs. Duplessis was told, she was actually given a memo and said, this is the questions that will be asked, this is the answers you're giving. And she refused. And where's Mrs. Duplessis today? A contract was not renewed.